You guys ready to get this thing kicked off? Okay, so I'm the Dean of the Business School, Cliff Allen, and it's a very exciting event that we're having today. I want to give you a little bit of an introduction of what you're going to go through over the weekend, and then we have a first of 3 guest speakers that you'll hear from to inspire you to think about things differently. So this, as I said, is the second time we've done this. The first time we did it, we focused on healthcare. And so we had a theme, and we have the same kind of theme, although this time it's designed a little bit around cities. So that's purposely wide open. Cities can be smart cities, can be sustainable cities, whatever it may be that you think about that can make the city of Portland better. So what we want you to do is leverage the community here, leverage the speakers that you hear, and think about what is the problem that you're trying to solve. So when you think about a project or a company, 2 things come to my mind. I've started a couple, and you have to come up with an idea that somebody has a problem you can solve, and then can you monetize it? Because I'm here to tell you, if you can't monetize it, it might be a really cool idea, but you're not going to get funded. Okay? So think about those 2 things as you're working through your ideas. There's a wide variety of people that are going to be doing this event, so grad students, undergrad students, engineering students, business students, so it'll be a good group to have divided up into teams and work on it. This is not going to be when you do your pitch. How many people watch Shark Tank? This is not that, okay? If you could just do yourself a favor, next time you watch Shark Tank, just tell yourself, this is not the way VCs work. Okay, so no one's going to be negotiating for a percentage of your business during the pitch. Really is more about, again, what problem you're trying to solve and can you monetize it, okay? So our goal is really to have 100% of the MBA students. How many, I'll ask it this way, how many are not MBA students here? Okay, so quite a few are MBA students. Well, good. So MBA students, you will have other people in your group. I love MBA students, but be nice to them, the people who aren't MBA students. Okay? The important thing is have fun and make sure that you have really open and listening to everybody in your group, because there's going to be a lot of good ideas that you might hear. And so how can you take that to the next level? Because that's what the Pitch Fest at the end is about, is who's thought through this the entire way and what really is it you're trying to do. Okay? All right, so have fun. I'll turn it over to Sandra. You can introduce our guest speaker.
Thanks for being here tonight. Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Morris. I am on the 5th floor of this building with a few people who are focused on creating programming and experiences and interfacing with the community around PSU, with the topic of entrepreneurship in mind, and with the idea of bringing experiences to students in an environment where you can test your thinking, test some ideas, play around with some things that you might not be able to do with in your full-time employment. But to really start to help you think about how entrepreneurship will play in your life after PSU. And I'm thrilled that we're kicking off tonight with a gentleman who was highly recommended to me, and I'm going to tell you why in a few minutes. First, I just want to say hi to Melissa Appleyard, who many of you know is the Dean of Graduate Studies at the School of Business. And she is one of the biggest advocates for entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial thinking, the idea of building that out at your time at PSU, of anyone I know. Charla Mathwick, is she here? Charla, you still here? So Charla is my partner in crime on this. When I first came to PSU and took on this responsibility, she was one of the first people at my door saying, we have to do something to reinvigorate Kickstart Weekend at PSU and make it, part of the curriculum. And to Shell Sorensen, who has made it part of the curriculum. So, awesome. Thank you to the 3 of you for the support, and also to Cliff, who has been a big supporter of our direction in this space. So the person I want to introduce you to is Ryan Tabrah. Ryan was introduced to me by an old colleague of mine, and when I say old, I mean that I knew him a long time, not that I'm old or that he's old. Who worked at Intel for a long time. We worked side by side, and I said, you know, I'm really looking for someone who can come and talk with students about what it's like to work in an industry that is having an impact on how we look at cities and how we are connected, and how that changes everything, and what problems can we solve. And I'm not looking for somebody from the semiconductor industry. I really would like somebody who could come, who can talk at a vision level with us, and who would connect with students. And he said, I know the person. First of all, this guy is a general manager in the Internet of Things group at Intel, and has responsibility for transportation specifically, and transportation products at Intel. And he's going to talk a lot about that, so I'm not going to go into that in a lot of detail. But essentially what it means is he's redefining a really, really, really big company. He's at the helm of redefining how that company thinks about their businesses and about their products and about where their products go and how people are using them. Because right now, the thing you're doing in your car with a computer will get you arrested, right? If you're reading your texts or you're talking on the phone. And his business is about making it safer and better connected for all of us. Ryan also spent a lot of time in startups before he came to Intel, so he has that experience behind him as well. When I talked with him, hands down, so enthusiastic, so interested in being part of the Portland community, so interested in getting exposure to PSU students, that there was no way anyone else was going to kick off this weekend. So I want to just introduce Ryan to you.
Thank you. That was an awesome intro. Full disclosure, I was in Germany yesterday, so I'm a little jet lagged. So if I forget a word, forget someone's name, that's why I have my computer up here, because as much as I've been practicing this talk, I need some notes. So it's just the life of an international company. You travel around a lot, but thanks for making me come home a little early, because I was supposed to spend all week in Europe, and I said, no, I have to be back in time to do the PSU talk Thursday evening. So anyway, thank you. So good evening, I'm Ryan. I am the general manager of the Transportation Solutions Division. At Intel, when you're considered a general manager, you actually own a full P&L, right? So there are different types of P&Ls in large companies like Intel. Sometimes it could be like I would call fake P&Ls with lots of fuzzy boxes that are horizontal or vertical across different types of financial triggers. But we, in IoTG, which is the Internet of Things, it's everything that's not a PC or a server at Intel. So within IoTG, we work on automotive, transportation, retail, industrial systems, everything that's kind of been considered embedded, and now they're getting smarter and more connected. My division specifically delivers and focuses on transportation and automotive. We deliver the next generation of immersive, safe, connected and interactive automotive products. Stuff like ADAS, or Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, software-defined cockpits, and vehicle experiences. Publicly, I can tell you that if you've been in the latest Tesla, the big screen behind there, that's one of our products behind that screen. That's the compute behind that. So that's just one of the things we're into. I'm originally from Hawaii. I found out there was some other Hawaiians here. I don't look like I'm from Hawaii. It's okay. I went to Oregon State, though. Married a duck. Went to the Bay Area during the first .com. Did a couple companies, and then we wanted to get out of the Bay Area and started looking around. I had some connections at Intel. I'd always wanted to work at Intel. I didn't think they would hire me, and now I've been here for 10 years. I've had 3 distinct careers at Intel, and Intel is like a big city of just amazing types of jobs. I have an engineering background, but we get a lot of our financial folks from PSU. There's a lot of marketing that needs to be done. If you think of a job, Intel needs it. There's like 100,000 worldwide employees, and just here in Oregon, it's our largest site. I do appreciate you guys stopping to eat pizza and joining me on a Thursday night. I'm sure it was the most fun that you could think of was to talk to someone from Intel on a Thursday night. But I'm going to be here to get you a little bit more pumped about some of the stuff at Intel, what you guys can do with your Better Cities Challenge. We're going to talk about where technology is going and how it can fuel innovation, and how you being in Portland can actually impact the entire world with some of the ideas you might be coming up with. As you put your hats on with these different types of ideas, I want to make sure that you keep in mind that it's the company's values and the people that actually do the work that make the impact. It's not the Steve Jobs, right? Everyone in the news and everything you read, it's like all these single individuals that drive innovation. But there's some really good books out there and data that drives that it's groups and diverse individuals that come together as a team that change the world. With that lens, let's talk about what Intel does. So in 1974, they started operations here in Oregon. Over $40 billion of investment developing factories within Oregon. Lots of water. It's awesome. Very close to Santa Clara. It's such a huge investment in Washington County. We have a little over 20,000 full-time employees in Washington County. You can double that if you think about all the contract workers that serve the employees. There was another cool stat that came out of the Oregonian when we just built our latest factory that for every PhD we hire, Washington County has to hire 10 other people. Just school teachers, policemen, someone at a store, whatever, right? So it's a lot of revenue. This creates a thriving technology Silicon Forest. There's a bunch of other little small companies that feed in to the fabs here. Also software companies. Full disclosure too, I forgot, I'm a software engineer stuck in a hardware company. So I know there's a lot of folks here that care about logistics and some of the other things about the fab. I am not a fab person, but I respect the fab people. And we take all their awesome products and the things they do and actually take them to product. There's a lot of talent that's very local. And Intel's annual economic impact in Oregon is approximately $27 billion. The facility in Ronler Acres, we're building a water recycling facility. And this is not only good for the environment, but it's also helping us save money by reusing the water that we buy from the city every day. And right now, I think we use about 80% of Hillsboro's water. And then we give it back to them for free, cleaner than we got it. So we're actually trying to recycle our own water, but it's still using the water. Diversity and inclusion. I know it's a big part of Portland State. It's a big part of Portland in general. It's one of the things that keeps me at Intel. Being at a company that has somewhat of a soul is a good thing. And there's a lot of data behind if you are building the world's future technologies, you have to understand how everyone would be impacted by those things. I think a lot of times in Silicon Valley, they are making things just for San Francisco, right? It only applies to that. So I really enjoy being at Intel that not only talk about inclusion, but they act on inclusion. Executives' bonuses are tied to inclusion. We have a problem right now with female retention in the company. And we have a yearly target on making sure that females feel included across all types of the different business verticals within our organization. And I can tell you right now, automotive is a problem. This is why it's one of our pillars to not only have diverse employees, but to include all employees. And what this does is it makes Intel competitive in a much more competitive global environment. Social impact. Intel has long been committed to applying technology and the talents of its employees. I remember the first time I joined Intel, about the third week I started, my manager came up to me and he said, Ryan, when are you going to be volunteering? I was like, oh man, he wants me to work on weekends and go volunteer. Like, I thought I was out of that. Like, I thought I came to join Intel and maybe have my weekends. And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, no, don't stress out about it. Like, just tell me what you want to volunteer in and we'll work it in. And I'm like, okay, so if I want to go and read at my son's school and help underprivileged kids learn to read for like an hour on a Friday, I can just go do that? He's like, yeah, and plus you get to put your hours in, and we go pay the school $20 for your 1 hour and up to $4,000. I was like, okay, whatever trick this is. And I started doing it. I didn't get fired, and it was an awesome benefit. And so now, with all the grants that we do locally, and with the ability to volunteer and get paid to do it, and they pay the facility that you're volunteering at, it's pretty awesome. Adds a little bit of a soul to what you're doing every day. I think overall, our employees donate over 300,000 hours in this community alone. All right, so what's in Oregon? Our next-gen fab. Hillsboro is home to Intel's state-of-the-art $4 billion fab. If anyone's in finance, $4 billion is a big number to go and amortize over, and you want to amortize as quickly as possible. And it's called D1X. We are currently manufacturing 14 nanometer products. My first little automotive baby came out of that fab. And so it's one of our best fabs, and our future 10 nanometer products are going to be coming out of that. Of course, with me being here in Oregon, it's our transportation headquarters. A lot of our product managers are architects. Majority of the leadership in our software and our server divisions are also here. So it's a big center of excellence for kind of the next generation of products in transportation. We have our top revenue generating business here as well. It's our PC business. Everyone thinks it's a dying business, but we somehow continue to, if you've read our recent reports, it's growing. We're driving new initiatives on how people can use PCs to enrich their lives beyond what they're doing today, and the PC continues to evolve. Quantum research. The next evolution of compute is quantum, and we're proud that our Maze research lab is here locally in Hillsboro, driving the next wave of compute in quantum. And then, of course, security. That's actually where I started. I was a security software engineer. We have a big division of our lead security engineers here, both hardware and software, and they drive not only security within our products, but security in initiatives that actually make using technology really boring for all of you, because people can't get access to your data. So it's a thankless job, and they do it all, including blockchain, and they drive it back up into the open source community. Most people don't understand that Intel is one of the largest software companies in the world. We also we write more software for like the Intel kernel. The Linux kernel, and also for Android as well. So we're huge contributors to software because software unleashes our own products. All right, now to the kind of the meat of the presentation. Most people know us as a PC-centric company. If you do read the news in the Oregonian, or you've seen some of the major press, 2 weeks ago we went loud and proud on that we're definitely making ourselves a data-centric company. When I was in an open forum in Germany with my own employees Tuesday, they asked me, what the heck does that mean, right? Data-centric is driving the use cases of all the data we have that's being driven by all the endpoints. You can think of a car as it's driving around autonomously, is sitting there recording everything, both in video, radio waves, it's recording what's happening inside, and it's tons of data. And that's just from one car. And then there's all these other different endpoints in the infrastructure. And so you have to compute those endpoints and all that data. And so what do we make a lot of money on? Computing data. Right? So that's why we're driving our focus on data-centric workloads. That's what we're going to talk about today. And 2 weeks ago, we released this first data-centric portfolio of products. It's a lot of the products that I worked on when I first joined Intel around solid-state drives, memory technologies. And again, this is just unleashing the ability to take huge amounts of data and be able to collate and put them all together. The stuff like the black hole picture yesterday, if anyone's a geek here, no way they could have done that 10 years ago. No way. The amount of data they collected and then had to compute simultaneously is because of the stuff that Intel's been working on, both the data center, workstations, and communication. So with that, there's a much better video. Gives me a little bit of break. It'll be a short video.
At Intel, it's our mission to empower the greatest innovators of our time with the technologies they need to take their ideas further. And it all starts with data. The data-centric computing era is marked by the rapid growth of cloud services, the transition to intelligent 5G networks, the explosion of connected devices, and the adoption of advanced analytics and artificial intelligence. That's why we've made it our focus to supply the solutions needed to power the data-centric world. From large, complex applications in the cloud to the edge, our customers are looking for solutions that can move, store, and process data faster, turning it into actionable insights that drive business forward. We are uniquely positioned to address the requirements of the data-centric era through the delivery of a silicon infrastructure foundation that fuels the extraction of data value, unlocking insights and delivering optimized compute at the location of highest return. As data becomes more complex, with things like 3D images and massive amounts of video, our comprehensive portfolio of compute, storage, and connectivity products and software tools allows us to help our customers transform data from a burden to be managed into a competitive advantage. From 5G technology to artificial intelligence and IoT, businesses choose Intel to provide trusted, industry-leading infrastructure performance that helps drive growth and rapid innovation. Our customers are bringing the future to life, and we are working to make sure they have access to everything they need to do it. At Intel, we push possible forward.
You heard the first new bong. You hear the new bong? It's deeper, it's more subtle. It's awesome. I have no idea how much we paid for that. I wasn't part of it, but it's still awesome. I get pumped when I see that because I don't get to see the marketing stuff all the time. So it's not all about our products. It's actually what our products unleash for other companies to do. One of my favorite cartoons that I share with my product team is, if you know, like the Nintendo game, it's like your customer is Mario, your product is the little fire thingy, and combined, Mario's shooting fireballs. That's what an awesome product's doing, right? So if you focus on those kind of things with the kind of not too sexy data-centric and what does that mean, and all these different types of processors and CPUs, GPUs, XPUs, FPGAs, you put them all together, some pretty cool stuff can happen. Some examples. Let's begin with mobility. It's a problem in cities, right? Mobility truly needs to be democratized for it to be fair. And that's really what autonomous driving is going to bring, is that now if you can make it affordable for everyone to get in their individual transportation pods, whatever they become, then they don't have to wait for a city bus to come pick them up at a certain time on a certain cadence. That's something that a lot of people don't realize, that's really where it's going towards. But the first step, and what's driving it, is that mobility just in today's existing infrastructure isn't there for everyone. We have an aging population. More and more people are able to live long and healthy lives with disabilities that they couldn't do before. But it still means that their mobility can be hindered. See, what is some of the stuff? There's The first example is focused on approximately like 300,000 people with spinal cord injuries. There's Hubox Robotics releases Wheelie 7 Kit. It's a solution that's powered by our IA to enable people to control their motorized wheelchairs with just simple facial expressions. So it was really cool. You feel great doing it. It stems from some of the work we did in previous famous wheelchairs, like I'm blanking on Stephen Hawking, right? So his wheelchair, his able to talk and move and stuff, was a big program and project at Intel that was something that if you were lucky enough, you were able to work on that program. Well, so what I do in my group is we see technology like this being built at Intel and through other companies, and then we think, well, how can you apply that to vehicles? Because that's the products we're going into. So in vehicles, the same facial expressions and how you're moving, you don't want to drive your car using your facial expressions right now. But you could detect if someone's actually watching when they're driving. You could detect where their face is before the airbag goes off. I don't know if many of you know that if you've ever been in a car accident, an airbag can maim you. It can severely hurt you, right? If you are a different height, different cadence from where things are, maybe you're not seeing something, right? So there's technologies that are being put in future vehicles, and there's even the latest Teslas and the latest Audis all have cameras, and Volvos too has cameras pointing at you, and that's what they're doing. It's driver awareness, driver monitoring. So the same technology, we can do this for mobility, can be applied across other sectors. Same technology can be put into industrial systems for worker safety. So as you're doing manufacturing, you want to make sure that no one loses a finger, no one gets killed with big hydraulic systems moving around. And you can literally watch where people are, what they're thinking, what they're doing, how they're feeling before they faint, and you can possibly save a life. It's pretty cool stuff. So inference at the edge. Our next example is not really urban, but the innovation potential is substantial because urban environments still don't have enough data points for collection. So recently we partnered with the National Geographic Society and Leonardo DiCaprio's foundation to better protect animals from poaching in a national park in Tanzania. In the park, they had a small team of park rangers who were responsible for protecting the species from poachers. Using Intel Artificial Intelligence, the team created a trail guard AI, a camera that uses AI to detect poachers entering reserves and real-time alerts. Park rangers then send in helicopters and try to stop them, right? Not only is trail guard inexpensive, it's allowing it to be deployed in large quantities under small budgets, and each unit lasts about 1.5 years on a battery. So this is something that is revolutionizing how you protect, endangered species out in a place that you could never do before. So when I knew I was coming to this, what could we do with these cameras looking for specific human interactions within the city? Could it protect something? Could it be turned into a Minority Report, right? That's what everyone always wants to take technology and turn it into Minority Report, where you can just stop someone doing something bad before it actually happens, right? But for me, I think that as a resident of the Portland area, we all know we have a homeless issue, right? We also know that there's migratory people that come through Portland, and it's not always well documented. Maybe we could do something better in the city of setting up different services or something around this stuff. So just giving you some potential ideas of what we could do. My favorite topic. Anyone been to Rogue Brewery? No one? Yeah, okay, good. So beer, it's a major staple of any Portlandia person, right? Better beer means better food. And the Rogue Brewery came to us and told us that they had an issue where their hops to produce the beer had to be dropped into a vat exactly 12 hours from harvest. And they had no clear way of tracking the hops and making sure that actually happened. So sometimes they would get bad entire batches of beer out. And we're like, oh, this didn't hit exactly at 12 hours. So working with us, we instituted, they engaged Intel with a proof of concept. We call it Intel Connected Logistics Platform. It's a combination of services, servers, endpoints that kind of track at a reasonably price, so it's worth it, where the hops, when it's actually cut, and then all the way to the vat. And it seems pretty simple, but it reduced a lot of waste, reduced cost. If you apply this to other crops, not just beer, not just the fun stuff, you could lower the cost of vegetables. You could lower the cost of sustainable food that's good for folks. And so for the poor communities who are used to getting just fast food or getting the cheaper frozen foods, might have a chance to be able to afford fresh produce in a major city like Portland or in other larger cities. At Intel, we believe that being a catalyst for change comes with the responsibility of ensuring the world is prepared for technology changing, and we are going to help usher it in, because we're seen as a leader, right? So when Intel says something, people listen to it, because it's, they know that there's a big company behind it, a lot of resources behind it. This is especially true for artificial intelligence. It's going to impact industries. It already is impacting industries if you don't already know about it. The workforces are going to be changed. Your type of job, what you do every day when you get to work, is going to be much different from when I started my job. My kids, I worry about what kind of jobs they're going to have, because AI is going to come in and going to change the way we work. There's going to be a lot of data around. Last month, we released a national strategy for AI, specifically on the US. Our global neighbors, including India, China, Japan, and the EU, have also kicked off an adoption of their own AI strategies. Our strategy contains certain pillars: innovation and development. We must identify key areas to increase R&D investments. Right now, we are underperforming in that respect at a national level and a global level. Other countries and other companies are investing a lot more in AI. We need to establish ethical guidelines, data protection regulations, and broader global standards using unified data systems and international data interoperability standards. If AI only works in one region, like the US, or only like in China, you actually lose a lot of the data that could be between. And by the way, a lot of folks from China come to the US, and a lot of US folks go to China. So we need to be able to share these resources globally and be able to trust it. And that's a big task to happen. Data liberation. We must incentivize data sharing through tax or policy incentives. Because if you create just this vertical wall of data in AI, again, you kind of hold the keys of the kingdom. Yes, you can charge a lot more, but it stunts growth. So we, as a society, have to decide to incentivize folks to share types of data. We must create a comprehensive federal privacy legislation for collection and sharing, and lead by example as a nation with open government data. And again, Intel is very focused on the interoperability standards. I don't know if many in the room here understand that from the birth of the PC, we've been behind, we pretty much were one of the main companies behind Ethernet, USB, PCI Express. All these things were to unleash and unlock compute. And we did it just to move the industry forward. AI now gets into where it touches our lives, and the interoperability, and done in the right way, will make a huge impact. Employment and welfare, we must update our K-12 curriculum to train our future workforce for AI. I see it every day with my children. I have a son who's a freshman here in Beaverton and a daughter who's in 5th grade. When I talk to my coworkers in Japan or China, my kids are way behind in math, way behind in science. And they definitely don't study as long. And they just want to go on YouTube and Minecraft all day. So, how do we flip that here in the US? Because I can tell you as a major company like Intel, we want to hire more folks locally, but we literally cannot hire enough graduates with the right skill sets for AI and math and science here in the US. And so, we as a society, we have to make this change. We have to invest in our schools. It can't be an afterthought. It can't be always teachers marching down in the middle of Salem. I don't want Oregon to be always on the bottom list of the school system anymore, right? We have such great universities. It's ironic. We have great universities, yet our elementary and high school systems are so far behind. We also have to have mitigation programs in place once AI hits. When I first came to Oregon State, I watched the tail end of Oregon transitioning from having a lot of forestry folks, and they were trying to help, the university was trying to help forestry folks change their jobs to jobs that weren't reliant on the forestry industry. We're going to have the same thing happen at a much grander scale, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities around that. You know, how do you train entire workforces that were used to punching a button over and over again and checking their phones once in a while, and now they're automated out, or AI has obliterated their need or necessary for even human oversight. Now, where does that person go and work? Barrier removal, we must apply general legal principles where the same laws governing human behavior today expand to encompass AI. It's kind of a scary thing that we're literally writing what I read as a kid, being a geek, all these books about robotics and AI, they're becoming real. And we have to be that future that makes sure that that happens in the right way, right? While you think through these innovating business concepts, let's make life in the city better. There's one element that we think that you should focus on is pillar number 3, employment and welfare. A big deal. So as AI hits Portland, as AI hits Pacific Northwest, what do we have to do? What kind of companies can we make? What kind of innovative products can we make to be successful as a community? So employee displacement. Building incredible cities using products and concepts is amazing, but we're not being good to your employees. If we're not being good to your employees, let's question if the impact is worth it. So according to the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, as of January, Oregon has an estimated 14,476 homeless people. A majority of them, of course, are here in the Portland area. They're experiencing homelessness each given day. The dean just told me there's homeless students within PSU, right? Looking anywhere downtown Portland, you can see we're experiencing chronic homelessness. There's families involved. I've had my children involved in community events, and they're just floored when kids show up in the dead of winter and don't have socks, right? For my kids in sheltered Beaverton, it's a wake-up call, right? So how do we have that? How can we shift that, right? Shifting back to innovation and new business, the average time of employment at a startup is 2 years. I remember when I was in my first startup, I thought anyone that worked at a company for 5 years was old and should just retire. I've been in Intel for 10 years. I've had a sabbatical. It's awesome. I'm not suggesting the majority of homelessness will let go from startups, but when we look beyond company financials and ensure we're doing what we can so that the employees can stay employed, or a lot of startups don't ever think of the negative end game. When you build your startup, you always think of am I going to go sell to another company? Am I going to go IPO? I'm going to hit that magical turn. But no one ever thinks about what happens if you don't make it, right? I was in a startup that just went flat, and they didn't know how to do severance packages. There was no way. And that impacts communities. When I do these community events under the bridge, I've actually met ex-Intel employees. So here's a person who worked at Intel, schooled, probably got into drugs. I didn't get their whole story, right? But homeless on the street. Why are they out there, right? How can we get them back into society, giving back to society? Another passion of mine, reading books. The latest one that I had my staff read was Lab Rats by Dan Lyons. It talks about my favorite topic, where Silicon Valley is changing the way most of our companies are run. China is also going through the same thing. If you read about it, it breaks down the 4 ways in which we've turned our employees into lab rats by adding various stressors to our life, which limits our own lives and results in crumbling careers. Number 1 is money. Employees are making a lot less money today in comparison to the cost of living hikes. So there's a lot of data out there that most of the people that are going in and getting lots of money, it's not where it should be compared to where the CEOs are making more money or the folks that are just playing in Wall Street. Insecurity. Employees at startups, other companies, they live in constant fear of losing their jobs. That's not a way you want to go to work. Change. New technologies, methodologies, workplace arrangements. It wreaks havoc, and change really just gets employees really nervous. And then sometimes employees aren't giving the tools to get to that next step, right? So we just talked about AI. Even at Intel, if you're not focused on some product that is working with AI, you probably need to be working on your resume. It's a big company, right? Something you're doing has to go towards that space because that's the growth. You're not working towards a data-centric place. So as an entrepreneur, you still have to care about your employees. And then that comes to dehumanization. Folks are often hired, managed, and fired as actual machines, which then we use algorithms to select them, analytics to monitor their performance, and then they produce results which are too slow, and we let them go, and we replace them with another human being. Right? So that's the lab rat thing. That's pretty much what, there's a company up in Seattle that gets blamed for that all the time, right? Even in my own group, I spend a lot of time working with the employees that report to me, making sure they don't feel this way. And it takes effort. I hate how there's companies out there now today saying, we are not a family, we are business, deal with it. I'm not going to work for a company like that because it's not worth it. I have a beautiful family at home. I don't want to surround myself by a bunch of people who don't want to be there either, right? Got to be doing something cool and fun. So it's a great book. It could make you depressed for the first couple of chapters, but at the end of it, he does have some really cool ideas that definitely, if you ever build your own company, make sure you take that to heart, or when you go and look for a company to work at, make sure you watch out for those signals. One of my final points, Portland is weird. We should embrace it. It's different. You're in a very different city. I get to go see most of the major cities around the planet. I've been all over China, all over Europe, all over the US. I get to go to the Valley all the time. I lived in the Valley. Portland has a very unique sense of community. I can literally tell you when I'm in an airport if there are people coming off a Portland airplane because they're just nice to people. They're just nicer. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the coffee. I don't know if it's the beer. I think we have a chance here in Portland that, let's not compete with Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley has all the money, has all the unicorns. They can go have the unicorns, right? Keep the hearts of your employees thriving. Keep the heart of your community inside of whatever you come up with, and also embrace Portland's weirdness. There's probably something there, something magical that can be applied globally, or at least in the Pacific Northwest, that can impact a lot of lives. True innovation starts from ideas, but remember, employees are what enables the innovation to actually come to life. So you can go and write all these cool little proposals, but then it takes a lot of work to actually get them off the ground. A lot of work. And with that, I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Robert Noyce, co-founder of Intel. Don't be encumbered by history, go off and do something wonderful. We have that in our buildings, several places. It's a pretty cool quote. He didn't say go do something cool. Didn't say go do something that makes a lot of money. He said go do something wonderful. So whatever you do, make sure that there's some kind of endpoint that matters. All right, Q&A. Almost right on time.
a mic for questions, and we're going to try to use it because we're videotaping. So I'm going to run around. Man, I'm going to get some real good exercise tonight. Thanks for coming out.
Hi there. Oh, I'm very loud.
Just to you. It's I can't.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned AI and how this is what Intel is sort of working on. What do you think are going to be the first jobs or industries that's going to be impacted by AI first?
Okay, so already we're seeing AI do financial analytics. So there's a lot of finance folks in here, right? Right. So financial analytics. Excel is going to die a very sudden death. I'm coming to Decision Quality event downtown next week. That's I think it's an Intel sponsored event, and it's we have a decision quality group, and they're talking about this very thing about how AI could literally tell you exactly what your company should be doing, but what are you missing in kind of the human aspect of seeing the bigger picture? AI only knows whatever data you feed it. And our human brains are still very good at collecting these different bits and pieces that have no bearing on what you're looking at, and then you kind of get a sense and you can go and make a really good decision on something. I think AI is going to, it's going to revolutionize retail. So seasonal retail jobs, you're already seeing probably in the news, robotics going and doing shelving in Walmart, right, and other areas, and Amazon. AI is really making helpful robotics. If you have to sit there and tell a robot to do, it kind of doesn't make the robot worth anything. But if a robot can just go figure out on its own almost 90% of what it needs to do, then you've replaced a lot of human beings. That robot doesn't get sick, doesn't call in, and the government doesn't force you to pay severance, right? So there's a reason why that's all going to be automated. I also think that monitoring jobs. So you ever seen like probably when this building shuts down, there's like a security guard that sits here at night, right? There's people in different public or other organizations. I mean, already in China, they've replaced all the monitoring jobs with just cameras that sit there and use AI to do facial recognition, analytics on just the way you walk, what you're doing. That's all, so it's all out there, and it's going to get rid of all these kind of jobs that people are usually just sitting there on their cell phones or, sometimes falling asleep, but that's a huge amount of employed people today. That's just my opinion, by the way. That's not official Intel speak, that's just my opinion.
So that was a great segue. Cameras, you talked about cars having tons of cameras. You've got cameras in China looking at how people act. You encouraged us in Portland to stay weird, and yet we could have cameras looking at us saying, "Oh, this person's a little too weird. Maybe they shouldn't do that." So I'm curious, I'm going a little long, but you talked about diversity. I'm curious if Intel has a philosopher-in-chief or ethicist on staff, and if you do you keep those numbers so you can say, not only do we have diversity in color and gender, non-gender specific, but what about ethicists and philosophers? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. A couple of our fellows, so we have like these Uber geeks that are called fellows in our company, and then we have senior fellows, which I think we only have like 10 of them now. One of them is an anthropologist, and she talks about how our technology can make or break kind of this ethnic, to have ethics. We talk about it a lot, even in the automotive space, where what the products we do and the customers we work with, how ethical are they, right? And we do have certain guidelines, and we actually have to take an ethics and compliance class every single year, and it's modified for technology, and every single Intel employee has to take it. And you can be fired for not following those policies. So it's not just sticking to your kind of culture in the back of your badge, hoorah, rah, rah. It's like, hey, every single day you're either acting ethically or you're making decisions with ethics in mind. When to your camera point, I think as a society, we have this problem with autonomous driving. we as society have to pick the right point of what we're worth giving up to actually benefit from. People gave up their privacy by joining Facebook. What'd you get out of it? Your grandma bugs you about these stupid pictures you accidentally unlocked from a party. Yeah, the president, right? Yeah, whatever. I'm not getting into politics. You gave up your privacy for that, but you didn't know you were giving up your privacy. But when we start putting cameras everywhere, and you can save a life, or you potentially could save a life, how far can you go? And it's good. It may be per city, it could be a federal. All these things have to be kind of taken care of. But then there's other societies that don't have that choice. China's a great example. They don't care. You don't have privacy. They're going to be monitoring you, and they're going to be watching what you do. My favorite example, though, in China, they give you right now in China, if you jaywalk and they watch you jaywalk, they will give you like a $15 fine, and it comes straight out of your Alibaba account or whatever, right? Well, there was a famous actress that was on the side of a bus that kept on jaywalking because the AI was seeing her face on the side of a bus, and it was literally pouring money out of her account with no oversight. And they finally figured out why she kept on jaywalking, because she was on the side of a bus. So that's the dangers of AI, right? And kind of the cameras everywhere. Great question.
Good evening, sir. So talking about the AI and the various types of cameras and facial recognition and such, could you talk about any work that you may do with the government, with our government, i.e. more specifically the military? Do you have any kind of partnerships or working together with some of those things, some of the cutting edge technologies that we're working with now that may help reduce some of the casualties on the battlefield and such as that?
Yeah, publicly, I don't know how much I can say. There's an entire federal and military division within Intel that takes our existing products and programs and services, and we actually segment them to work with the federal government and the military. But we also, as an entire company, some of our diversity and other types of things that we have to strive for is so that we still stay viable as a U.S. Company that can work for the federal and military. So that's about it. I mean, a lot of the stuff you see sometimes comes from there. Sometimes it's reused in those areas, like autonomous driving, for instance, right?
Thank you for your talk tonight, by the way, it was awesome. I wanted to ask, how do we insulate ourselves as individuals? I don't know if you have any ideas, not necessarily against AI, but like how do we work with it, empower ourselves to be integrated with it? There's some, AI is doing like really cool things. It's also frightening, but how as just a, run-of-the-mill human, like how do you have any ideas or, sorry, sucker?
Yeah, no, the easy answer, and I wish it was this way, is that we all had enough time to educate ourselves on it. But then where do you get the resources from, right? And we all know that the next generation, so I mean, watching my kids, I just gave my daughter a phone, she's 11, and some people judge me for that, but she turned into an emoji machine. It's not a phone, it's an emoji machine. That's all she does is text me emojis. But what I realized is the first thing she did is she let Samsung take her picture, and it made an emoji that was just like her. And now Samsung knows everything about my daughter. Is going to watch everything about her, right? And I even grapple with, is that right or wrong? Right now, I like that I can be in touch with my daughter. I know it's my fake daughter emojiing me, right? But I think with some of the other stuff, I think it's just education, but then having those policies where someone can at least take control of their data. I think it's really bad right now that if you do something accidentally on the internet, tweet out of context, you Facebook a photo that shouldn't be out there in the wild, it doesn't disappear, ever. And you can't even, the EU has some pretty forward-thinking policies. You can go to Google or Facebook and say, remove this or else, and then you get a fine. But we don't have that in the US. So I think those kind of policies need to mature, but not get in the way of business progression. AI is going to change medical, right? But how do we share the right medical information anonymously and trust these central locations so that someone doesn't come and make a hiring decision because Ryan drinks a little too much beer or something, right? And it's because it's in his medical profile, right? So those are all kind of things that, as a society, we have to worry about. And I think there are definitely startup initiatives, just being able to control your own data, being able to control video. There's probably a wicked thing out there. What if you wanted to walk around here anonymously? Could you put like a little cap on and still be able to see outside or not? I'm just shooting from the hip, but those are the kind of things that people will care about.
Thank you.
My name is Miles. You talked a lot about being a people-centered company and having that as a major value. I'm curious, what's your opinion on what's realistic as a leader for how you embed that into your decision-making when you're thinking about innovation and people being possibly displaced and being impacted by the future?
No, it's a fantastic question. It's the hardest part of my job because everyone has a boss. Everyone, whether it's your shareholders, yourself, your business goals, and not everything works out the way you want it to, especially when you have sites around the world. But what you do is you strive for transparency. And so there's a big initiative, and we've been doing it within our own group. Kira, who's my chief of staff here, she's been helping us do this where we overshare with every employee in my division where we're at, what we're doing, how we're doing it, so that if there is an individual that could be impacted by a shift in what we're doing, where we're going, maybe the resources we need, they have all the information they could have done to maybe do something way ahead of time. And then as a larger company, we do have not only the laws we have to follow, but then we do have the ability to give people soft landing grounds, right? And so you as a GM or as a business owner, like I said, you need to have that kind of what if everything doesn't go well package. Think about that, right? And how do you make sure that people have soft landings? Because good people will go and be able to find other jobs, and most people are good and talented. So how do you work that in? And if you're always striving to do what's right for the employees, what's right for the shareholders, and what's right for the customers, you can't go wrong. But it's how you kind of massage those viewpoints. And I think sometimes people forget about the employees. It's really easy. It's really sexy just to focus on the business, and employees are just lab rats. So you just need to, you as a leader need to set that as a precedence, and then hold your managers accountable. That's another thing. Hold your managers accountable for growing your employees.
Thank you for talking to us today. My question to you is, you talked about AI and embracing technology and the benefits of AI. So my question is to you is, what's Intel doing to ensure that our generation and our upcoming generations are going to be able to have jobs and a place to live? And yeah.
So we kind of went over it where, Intel tries to give back to the communities where we are, and that's globally. I mean, we do volunteering in Oregon, in China, in Romania. I mean, everywhere we are. That's part of, philanthropic type of things. Education is a big deal. We feel our inclusion efforts is a big deal. That doesn't solve all problems. And like I said, and we stay true to our values as a corporation, being ethical, and being a world-class organization. That's, we're not going to go solve all the world's problems, but we hope that technology that we make and the products we make are used for good and for wonderful things, right? Versus evil.
Hello, thank you for your talk. I was just wondering, what kind of recommendations do you have for future generations with such a fast-growing environment, fast-paced environment?
One of my main principles personally is continuous development. So I think a lot of times, regardless if you're even at your school, You have to push yourself to get out of your comfort zone. You have to read stuff that's not in your bubble. You should be reading books that you would not normally read. You should push yourself to meet people that don't have the same background as you. You should surround yourself with people that don't have the same background as you. And that will just open you, and that'll open you up for more possibilities. When I joined Intel, I knew nothing about automotive, other than I was really good at race car driving games. That was about it. And I always wanted a Porsche, but that was about it. And you know, when I had the opportunity to jump in automotive, I took my expertise with security software background, usability, developer products, just building products in general, but then I stayed humble and I read like a freaking sponge, even on my off hours, everything about the automotive industry, and I'm still learning. I'm not like the typical employee that, you know, grew up on the Autobahn and has been working at Harman or Daimler 3 generations. I'm not that person. So you just walk in, humble, you know, and learn from folks that have it, because there's a lot of stuff that's not even written down that you have to go learn. So push yourself.
It's going to go to me because I was wondering if Kira could join you. Maybe talk about her perspective on some of the questions.
I'd love to hear from Kira.
Be great. I mean,
She's
it's
not ready for it.
It's not that I'm tired of you, but
No, it's great. So let me tell you about Kira. Kira Boyko is my chief of staff. I've known her for 7, 8 years-ish. Yeah. She's actually been in Intel longer than me, but she was an intern back then. And we've had the blessing of working in multiple roles together through multiple groups. And so just like life, it's all about who you know. And then when I became GM, just at that time, she was a TA looking for a job, a technical assistant at another organization. And I was like, hey, can you come over and help me? I just became a GM, I don't know what I'm doing. She's like, are you ready for this? Because she has no filter on me because she knows me really well. And so she's coming, and she's now my chief of staff, and she's setting not only initiatives for our entire organization, but then she does stuff like this where she says, Ryan, yeah, you should really come back from Europe and go to this Portland State University thing because it's a pretty wicked opportunity for you to get in front of some smart people. So that's Kira. So any questions for her? Yeah.
Can you describe, sorry. So I think I've had several alums who become chief of staff for executives. Can you talk a little bit about your job? Because I think it's kind of like the ideal MBA job. That's a really cool MBA job.
Thank you. Sure, and I will say that being chief of staff is different for whichever executive you're working for. Your job is basically to cater to what they need from a role standpoint and kind of fill that, not necessarily gap, but area where they can then focus their efforts on other places. So for me, I'm chief of staff as well as technical assistant, and my job is really to work with the entire organization to make sure that they can be successful and as impactful as possible. So everything from creating job rotations for folks, specifically employees who are at sites that might not have great opportunities because they're just an automotive site, bringing them to other places to help them bond, build a better culture. I do a lot of operations roles to help make sure our organization is functioning well financially and structurally. When there's an issue with a customer, you could have, name whichever automotive company you want, call any hour of any day with a problem, and there has to be a task force immediately that's working to resolve that. It's grabbing the people together, making sure the task can be resolved, really, and keeping it updated from an executive standpoint. Because there's a different way you communicate with people at different levels. So it's all about information and making people happy.
I would say, too, what I didn't think would be a big part of the job is we build communication packages together. So when you don't have a chief of staff or TA, you're all on your own. You're writing your emails, you're writing your slide decks, and you get feedback later when it sucks. But then you finally have someone who can sometimes start it, and then you edit it, and then she edits your edits. And then it's a team effort on communication, because at this level, communication is like probably the biggest part of the job, over communicating. to your employees and to upwards, right, for folks that are making even harder decisions, and to your customers as well.
Hey, good evening. This is Nitin Saraswat. I had a quick question. I come from data and analytics background, and you talked a lot on AI. Just curious if you would be able to guide us with any good reads on AI specifically, areas where people would be interested to see where industry is going, specifically with 5G and IoT coming in.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I mean, AI is a fancy word, and even data analytics is being overused. Data scientist is like the new hot thing that they put on job requirements, but that's just they're not really data scientists. It's really funny. I think that getting yourself involved, a lot of the stuff that's being written about AI is actually already too late. That's the hard part. It's getting yourself involved in algorithm studies. Algorithms are going to be, they're like liquid gold, some of the algorithms within data analytics. In fact, I think I used the black hole example. I love how if you guys haven't seen the news, there's a young woman who was part of the team, and she wrote the algorithm on how to actually interoperate all of the images within, and she's getting all this like national press attention, and I don't think she was ready for it, because there were much bigger professors and scientists that were involved with the black hole initiative. But I mean, getting that picture of the black hole was like, what do they say, like taking a picture of a donut on the moon from here, and they were able to do it because of her algorithm. So I think involving yourself in some of the open AI initiatives is probably the least I'm trying to think of the word. Sorry, jet lag's coming in. It's where you can get your start, and then from there, there's communities that then can drive you to like recent papers, recent publications. But AI is just a fancy word for making sure that you can do all this data analysis and make the right judgments on them. So there's different aspects of it.
All right, thanks for being here. My name's John. Wanted to ask a couple questions. First, you said you were a software engineer to begin with, so where do you see potentially using like blockchain to secure AI and to help provide security and protection for privacy? That's the first question. Second question is, you're all over the automotive space right now. What's the coolest feature on a car that we don't know about yet that you've gotten the chance to check out already?
Yeah, that I can actually talk about. That's the hard part. Blockchain just democratizes data if it's done right. That's a simple answer. So I came from software security, and we were doing PKI back in the day, and PKI was the kind of company-driven way of doing blockchain from a results aspect, in essence. And now blockchain actually kind of unleashes the ability to share data across. Blockchain is one of those things like overused, like how there's blockchain lawyers and stuff. I love that. It's awesome how these things, people just like saying them and then they overuse them. But it is an important ingredient to the future. It is absolutely, and there's a lot of investment going in there from Intel, a lot of, and from the industry. From automotive, maybe it's because I'm a father. I am super excited that my soon-to-be 15-year-old driver, for less than 20 grand, I can get a really nice, safe car that has a bunch of assistive driving technology in there that he may not kill himself or kill someone else. To me, it's incredible that we're very close to where, even with human drivers, we can almost eradicate highway deaths in the U.S. 30,000 people die needlessly every year on the highway. In the US. I think it's like over 2 million in the world. And that doesn't include the people that are maimed, doesn't include the people that lose their jobs, doesn't include the capital aspect of having emergency services. When I was 4, my family was almost all killed by a drunk driver. And so if my kids never experience that, that'd be great. But there's some really, really cool technology coming in cars, and what we're trying to do in our own group is helping them accelerate the delivery of technology in cars, Right now, it's so embedded, and it's like they don't know how to do software, and it's a little bit slow. And technology is moving so quickly, and we need to get that in there, faster and in a safer way, so it's out there. Do you have any? You've seen some cool stuff. Do you have any features? All right.
So these were mostly proof of concepts, but when you start a proof of concept, things end up being reality several years later, so they're coming. We did some pretty cool use cases with an automotive company that was around recognizing who was in the car. So regardless of where they were sitting, it would customize the experience to them. So maybe you're in the back seat and one day your glass is a screen because we're not going to run into anybody at that point. Nothing's going to need to break. How do you turn that entire screen into a really cool experience so that if someone's in the back seat and they're like obsessed with Harry Potter, everything they see is like, oh, we're driving around and we're actually at Hogwarts, or we're in the forest or something. If you're someone sitting next to them, maybe you're interested in catching up on the news or doing something else from home because your car is going to be able to connect to your home and you can see what your systems are doing. But it will know when you get in the car who you are, what you want to do, and customize the experience for you. And you can imagine if that's deployed into a car sharing one day, right? You don't even need your own car. Everything just knows who you are. Maybe everything is a little scary, but eventually it's all going to be very custom and you'll be able to accomplish so much more depending on where you are.
I have a question for Kira, actually. So you mentioned that you were struggling to maybe promote or retain women within your organization. So if Intel, this giant corporation, is having a problem with that, what hope do smaller companies that don't have as many resources have, and what are you guys doing to lead promoting, retaining, attracting women in your corporation that we can learn from here?
Yeah, sure. For us, what we found is it's really all about how you're engaging with people. I would say the issue isn't necessarily specifically with the women so much as it is with management and how they are including people in conversations. And while Intel is a huge company, all of our divisions are relatively small. So our division, probably the size of a decent sized startup. So I think this can be applied anywhere. But one thing we do is we have really open conversations with people. So I travel around to all of the sites. We have them everywhere from Romania and Japan to Karlsruhe, Germany, and India. And it's sitting down with people and having very fixed discussions that are confidential to understand what are they experiencing, how are they feeling, and what do they want improved. And then from there, you develop education courses to have with management, to have with other employees. You do exercises to help them understand inclusion. And it's amazing, just in these inclusion discussions we have at different sites, your culture comes into play. How you see or perceive something is totally different depending on where you are or your own personal experiences. And when you have these discussions, people really open up and they learn from examples key takeaways that they didn't think they had before. So one of my favorite examples is a colleague in Romania brought this up recently where they were on a call. We're often on calls at crazy hours because you have international employees who need to join these. And someone from a country with a very heavy accent was speaking and no one understood. And it was 10 o'clock at night. They were like, I don't even care. I just want to be off the phone. And a colleague from another site cut in and said, okay, thank you. So I think what you just said was this, 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 and this. Is that right? And the person said, well, yeah. And it was just totally mind-boggling to this employee that someone would actually take this time at 10:30 at night to recap what this person said and help them communicate. And that's a good example of inclusion, where you just think it's basic communication with people, but what you're doing is making sure that person's heard, everyone understands it, and you're actually considering what they're saying. And so I use inclusion as an example because that's one of the key things that our women provided from a retention standpoint was that, they're there, they're a number, but they're not included. So it was, okay, well, how do we make everyone feel included? How do we make sure we're not just singling out a group so that everyone gets equal opportunity? And how do we fix the issue from a management problem to make sure the culture is changed?
Oh, well, can I add to it? So I was in the in a startup that as future leaders, you should not ever allow locker room type stuff happening in a business. And I think it's really hard because if you go and start a company with 4 individuals, they're probably some of your best friends, you've gone to parties with them, but as you grow as an organization, you have to kill that, right? And that's really, really hard for people to do. And it's really hard even in big companies when, you know, people are in these smaller sites and it becomes like a frat atmosphere, no offense to frats, but it's just, you know, and they don't even realize they make people feel not included. And it's not just because of the locker room talk, but it's because you have this really tight connection of friends. So as a leader, you need to push yourself and push everyone else on your leadership, in leadership roles, to actually include people, like with communication, making sure they're part of meetings, transparency. These are all very basic things, and for some reason, people are just really focused on the financial side because it's almost easier to do. The human side is not zeros and ones. It's an art form, and so you actually have to practice it and work at it.
I think we can take one more question.
Yeah, sure. So the question was, talk a little bit about my professional journey and share what made me successful in my current role. Okay. So my background is actually very different, I would say, from most Intel employees. I'm from Portland. I went to Arizona State for college, which was a mistake. I wish I'd gone somewhere in the Northwest. I thought palm trees and sun would be awesome, and then 2 months in, I was like, nope. Not a sun person anymore. But I actually majored in broadcast journalism, and then I went and did a year of law school after that. During college, I interned at Intel, so I was trying to be very specific of finding roles in technology companies or companies that weren't necessarily in alignment with my career trajectory at the time. That's because I wanted to broaden my opportunities and think beyond just the scope that I was learning in. So when I was at Intel, I did an internship in employee communications, an internship in HR, and an internship in one of our software teams. And then when law school first year concluded, I decided that's not going to be my path. No offense to attorneys. I think it's an incredible area to work in. It's just not one for me. So I went back to Intel, and I did roles in the software team. So I was a product manager. I also worked with our software developers from a developer program perspective, finding cool app ideas and technologies that we wanted to invest in to bring to life. It wasn't actually a finance role, but it was a little bit of a crossover, so I could grow a bit there. And then after my product management role, I followed Ryan, actually, to automotive. And I knew it was a cool growth area for Intel, and I wanted to be part of it. What is most important to me is that in my current role as chief of staff, technical assistant, anything you're doing that's higher up there that's specifically supporting someone who's a leader, pick a leader who you really want to invest in. You're going to be spending a lot of time, a lot of effort making this person look good and making sure that they're successful, right? And so if you're doing that for someone who you don't believe in, you're going to have a really hard time justifying the time you're spending, you know, away from your spouse, away from your friends, away from your family, away from your hobbies that you enjoy. I think what makes me successful is that I believe in Ryan. I believe in the trajectory of our business unit, the transportation team, and I believe in Intel. If I were working at a different company, I don't know, depends what that company was doing. If I were working for a different leader, it would depend who that leader was. Is it someone who I really, really admire and really want to be successful? That's important. You have to do something that you really care about.
That's a good point. It is about who you work for. In general, it's all about who you work for.
He's saying that because I just said
No. She and I have talked about it. It's like you need to care who you work for. You can go work at any company, but if you work for someone who's just doesn't have the same values as you, it's not fun.
Okay. I have one just cleanup announcement to make. Sarah, are you still here? Sarah has a sign-up sheet for you before you leave, so make sure that you see her if you didn't see her when you came in. Sarah Nando's in the back. So first, I want to thank Kira, because Kira and I spent a little bit of time on email and back and forth, and she really wanted to make sure that what we heard tonight and what we saw tonight was the true Ryan, and also fit some of our criteria, which is, how do we think about digital cities and how do we think about making cities better? And so we have a little gift for Kira.
Thank you.
How many are you coming back for the weekend? Cool, awesome. Well, you're not going to get one of these during the weekend, but the special gift, this has become, the rogue guys down the street are really sick of me coming in and asking for this special box. And it's full of something.
Sweet.
So thank you, Ryan, so much for being here. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. I know we have a lot to think about, and I think that's it. Charla, right? Anything else from you or Tishelle?
I just really appreciate everyone with great questions and listening to us on a Thursday night. So thank you very much. All right, good luck with everything.